Hi there, Alison here with another Cab Franc du jour. Today we are in Bourgueil. We're looking at the Yannick Amirault 2020 Côte 50 Bourgueil. Domaine Yannick Amirault is one of my all-time favorite producers in Bourgueil. The estate was established in 1977 by Yannick, and today Benoît, Yannick's son, is working alongside his father, and together they're farming around 20 hectares worth of vines in both Bourgueil as well as St-Nicolas-de-Bourgueil. So today we're going to look at their Côte 50. This wine is coming from around 4.5 hectares worth of vines from 4 distinct lieux-dits, all located in the commune of Bourgueil. Now you may recall from some previous videos that I have done some deep dives into the terroirs of these specific communes within the Bourgueil appellation, specifically the communes of Benoît and Eugène. So today I'm going to give you an overview of the commune of Bourgueil. So we're situated here to the west of the Changeon River. And the Changeon River flows from north to south. And here at the village of Bourgueil, it actually takes a bit of a hard right and starts to flow west. And here where the river flows west, this defines the southern border of the vineyard area in the commune. Now, as a little refresher, we find 3 distinct terroirs here in Bourgueil. We have the recent alluvial soils that hug the north bank of the Loire River. We also have the soils of the ancient alluvial terraces, specifically in the communes of Bourgueil as well as Eugène. And then we have the soils of the Côte, or the slopes, and this is at the northern edge of the appellation. Now, in the commune of Bourgueil, we have 2 of these terroirs. So we have the ancient alluvial terrace here, and this starts just north of the Changeon River. So we're, I guess, around 5 or so kilometers north of the Loire River here. And this area of the ancient alluvial terrace stretches about just shy of 2 kilometers towards the northern end of the commune. And here the vineyards are dotted just to the north as well as to the east of the village of Bourgueil. Now, in my research, in terms of researching Cabernet Franc, I have noticed that in terms of the major appellations for Cabernet Franc in the Loire Valley, that elevation plays a very important role in determining the bedrock influence of the vineyards and thus the terroir. So this whole elevation-terroir relationship, it does vary depending on the appellation. But here in Bourgueil, this ancient alluvial terrace, it sits starting at around 40 meters above sea level and then stretches to just shy of like 52-ish meters above sea level. And this is where we find these very deep, sandy, gravelly soils, and they sit atop the lower Turonian tuffo bedrock. Now, in the commune of Bourgueil, we also have the Côte, or the slopes, and this area of vineyards, it's a narrow band of vineyards. It's about 300 to 500 meters wide, and it's at the northern edge of the commune. And here we find more dramatic slopes. We have south and southeast facing slopes. There's a handful of east facing slopes closer to the Changeon River. And these vineyards are at around 60 to about 82 meters above sea level. And this is where we find the influence of predominantly the middle Turonian tuffo chalk. And there is more clay dominated in terms of the topsoil. So for this wine today, as I mentioned, it's coming from these 4 lieux-dits, and the parcels are all situated right around the 50-meter mark above sea level, hence the name Côte 50 or Côte 50. And this is at the northern edge of this ancient alluvial terrace. And here in these parcels, we have very deep, mostly sandy soils, and the depth of the topsoil is anywhere from about 2 meters to about 6 meters. And there's very little gravel in these parcels as well. And these vines are on average about 35 or so years of age, and the vineyard parcels are all farm certified organic. Now, from a winemaking perspective, all the fruit for this wine was hand harvested. They double sorted it, and then it was destemmed, but it was not crushed. And then fermentation takes place with indigenous yeast in large open top wooden fermenters. And maceration is through infusion. And the wine stays on skins for about 3 weeks, and then the wine is transferred into a large oak foutre where it rests for about 7 or so months before it is then bottled. And the goal here, of course, is to bottle this wine on the younger side to preserve the beautiful fruit character in this wine. So what can we expect from a Cabernet Franc coming from these alluvial soils, these ancient alluvial soils in Bourgueil? Well, because we have these very deep, mostly sandy, gravelly soils, the fruit from these vineyards tends to be best suited to Cabernet Francs that are a bit more on the early drinking side, more fruitier side, more of that easygoing style of Cabernet Franc. So let's get into this wine. The wine has a really nice lift to it, and the fruits do lean a bit more on the sweeter, darker side. 2020 was a warm vintage, and not quite as warm as 2018, but definitely on the warmer side as far as some recent years are concerned. So the fruit does lean a little bit more sweeter with a little bit of a darker edge. So I'm getting some dark red sherry. There's a little bit of a black wild raspberry note in here too. Maybe even a bit of a blueberry compote note as well. And the wine is much more fruit forward, which I quite like. And I hope that styles like this will perhaps draw in a new consumer that is new to the Loire Valley Cabernet Franc, because this is a very approachable style of the grape. And that fruitiness is quite nice, but there is of course some pyrazines here, but they are dialed back and they kind of come through for me as more of an herbal note, like a bit of fresh thyme. There's a touch of a cedar thing going on here. So in general, this wine leans a bit more fruit forward with nice, pure, sweeter style of fruits. Now, those same fruits come through really nicely on the palate, but the palate actually leans a smidge more savory. Some of those herbal influences are coming through a bit more on the palate, which I actually like because it provides a nice bit of balance. The palate is also a little bit on the spicier side. I'm getting a bit of like a white pepper note, maybe even a touch of cardamom as well. Now in terms of the acidity is really lively, really fresh, quite invigorating. There's a juiciness to the acidity as well, which I really like. Now, in terms of the tannins are definitely on the lower side. There's a supple texture to them, very fine. There's a velvety-ness, velvety kind of texture to the tannins in the mouth with a touch of a chalkiness on the finish as well, which I quite like. It does give the wine some nice structure and helps to balance the fruity character in the wine. Yeah, wine sits a bit more broadly on the palate. It does have a nice round middle palate experience, which I quite like. In general, the wine has a certain succulent character to it. It's lip smacking in a way. There is an ease about the wine, an approachability, definitely an effortlessness about the wine as well, a sense of companionability, but it's just delicious. It's such a wonderful expression of Cabernet Franc. And I've been thinking about one thing, so I'm going to go off on a little bit of a tangent here, but it's been sort of sitting in my brain for a while now. But I do want to stress that it would be customary for someone to suggest that this wine would be the entry-level wine as part of the Yannick Amirault range. But I think that term is not the right term we should be using here. And these styles of Cabernet Franc that are on the fruitier, more early drinking side, they are not necessarily inferior to those that are more of a structured, age-worthy style. No less time, care, and attention goes into making a wine like this versus a more structured and age-worthy style. So to call a wine like this perhaps an entry-level wine really is doing a disservice to the wine, because it's just as high a quality, it's just as delicious as those other examples that you might lay down for a longer period of time. It's different, it has a different place on the table. And I think this language that we use around these cuvées that tend to be more fruity or early drinking styles of Cabernet Franc, I think we need to kind of work on our language that we're using because these wines deserve just as much respect as those that require a little bit longer term aging in order to develop. And in fact, sometimes I think they're even more enjoyable than some of those structured age-worthy styles of Cabernet Franc. But it's just a little rant, a little food for thought here at the end of this video. But this wine, this Côte 50, is absolutely fantastic, and it is one that I would recommend for sure. If you've had this wine before, or you have another favorite wine from Yannick Amirault, do let me know what it is in the comments below. And of course, as always, I will be back again soon with another wine. Cheers.